Again, we are treated this morning and blessed to have a keynote panel from the support of Catholic Relief Services. So I want to thank Catholic Relief Services, which is the U.S. Bishops International Relief and Development Agency, set up since the 1940s. And have done and have been over 100 countries. I myself have experienced and gone to Sudan, all over East Africa. I've been to Latin America, Colombia, to see the amazing work that is done on the ground by Catholic Relief Services. You talk about people who are salt and light of the earth, the people that are on the local level that are doing the work of Catholic Relief Services because they hire within country. And again, those are the folks that know what the needs are and really doing that. And I've seen it in many different ways. And so when we were working on this to celebrate, again, the 60th anniversary of Pacem in Terris and the 40th anniversary of Challenge of Peace and the Center for Social Concerns, I felt like how could we not have Catholic Relief Services be part of this? Because they're really the ones that are doing the peace building around the world. So I'm going to be very brief here. Again, what we, in relationship and dialogue with Catholic Relief Services, they said they would really want to highlight peace in the Sahel region of Africa. So this morning we'll hear about building relationships in the Sahel and their Sahel Peace Initiative. So we have had two guests have traveled all the way here from Ghana to join us. And we've also have Steve Hilbert, who is the advisor for the U.S. Bishops and the International Office of Justice and Peace. I used to work down the hall at Catholic Campaign for Human Development, and Jerry Powers is here, also used to work in the International Justice and Peace Office. And Steve's there is the advisor for the work and policy and for the whole African continent. And again, we're joined then by two actually practitioners. Again, what we're trying to do is how do we connect the Academy and Praxis together to support each other. And so Most Reverend Alfred Agyenta is here to join us this morning. He's come all the way again, so thank you. And we have Sheikh Hussein Zakaria, who's also joining us, who's the chairman of the Interreligious Dialogue Committee. So. I especially want to thank the Sheikh for being here during Ramadan. So we got it's really long days in Indiana right now. So he's got to have some stamina to be here during this time. But I'm going to turn things over to Steve to do longer introductions and to set, again, further the context again. And then after that dialogue, we'll open up the two microphones on either side for any kind of questions that folks may have. So again, let's give a warm Notre Dame welcome to Steve and our folks from Ghana.
Thanks a lot. And can you hear me? Yeah, there we go. In fact, at the end of our session, we're going to give Sheikh a special Ramadan blessing in Arabic. So be ready. We're going to be fun. First of all, thank you for having us back. It's so good to be back in Notre Dame. I've come here several times to work with the Catholic Peace Building Network that's run out of the Kroc Institute and Jerry Powers. And Jerry, I don't see him in the room. My apologies or my condolences for Princeton's loss last night. That's too bad, but that's sort of the way I guess it goes. So my job is I'm just the opening band. I'm the setup man. My job is to basically set the context in which they are doing their work in peace building. So let me start very quickly and move on. So John, could you switch to the map, please? Thank you. All right. First, what we need to do is situate the Sahel. Where is the Sahel in Africa? So this is the map of Africa, mostly in West Africa, of course, is all the way to the left. Up here, I don't know whether you can see the clicker. I don't see the, but okay, see where Algeria and Libya, Egypt, that's the Sahara Desert. Going further south until you can sort of see, Mali, Niger, those words, that's the Sahara. And then once you get to the sort of the brown and greenish parts where you see Bamako, Burkina Faso, Chad, south of that word Chad, that is the Sahel. And so that's sort of where the brown, the brownish gray parts of the drier parts of the Sahel meet with the grasslands and the thicker parts of the Sahel. So that's the region that we're talking about. And there you can see Mali and Niger are there, and then further south you can see Burkina Faso. So that is where the most of the conflict that is in the Sahel right now is going on between Mali, and Niger, and Burkina Faso. So how did this start? Well, it started in Mali, and latent conflict had existed in Mali since independence, in fact, since before independence. When the French handed over the country to Mali, they included that brown part of northern Mali, which is the 2/3 part of the sort of the drier part of Mali. They connected it to the part of Mali that's there with the word Bamako, which is the capital of Mali. Now, those are two very different groups of people, very, very different groups of people. They grouped them together. And then for decades, they tried to work out how to rule each other. They came up with several agreements over the years. Those agreements never came to fruition. The statutes within these agreements were never respected. And so this sense of disenfranchisement continued to rise. So this is an issue that, I don't know, again, if Jerry's here, but Jerry talks a lot about self-determination and sort of self-autonomy. They didn't necessarily want to be autonomous, but they just wanted more power over their own affairs. That never happened. And then in 2012, the latent conflict that had been there for many, many years broke out into actual armed conflict when large numbers of Malians from that northern part came from Libya. They had been working with the Gaddafi regime and supported him. They entered back into Mali armed with the best weapons that Libya had. As you can imagine, that upset this balance that had existed for decades. They then basically established total control over that area. The Malian army could not get into that area. And then the Al-Qaeda group had already been there in small numbers. When they saw that this was a zone that the Malian government could no longer control, they then went in larger numbers. Then they started forming partnerships and alliances with some of the Malians just north of the word Bamako there. And again, I can't get this to work. So it's sort of the central part of Mali. So they started forming alliances with those people and splitting them, in particular the herders and the farmers. Most of the conflict in Mali is basically between herders and farmers that were then basically split by Al-Qaeda. And then ISIS came in, and they set up their own province of the Islamic State of the Greater Sahel. And so now you have these two groups, each one has formed their alliances, and the conflict exploded. And between 2017 and today, that conflict has increased sevenfold. The number of attacks, the number of violent events has increased since 2017 sevenfold. And as you can imagine, because borders aren't marked. I mean, you can cross a border and never know it. So then this conflict began to spill over into Burkina Faso, which you see just right of Bamako, and into southwest Niger. And so now a lot of conflict is going on in Bamako. The northern parts of Burkina Faso are now out of reach. Attacks are regular in northern Burkina Faso. And in that far southwest part of Niger, there are also lots of attacks there. The human costs of these attacks are enormous. And just some very quick figures. 2.9 million people are displaced. They're either refugees in other countries, including Ghana and Benin, and we'll get to that later, along with, excuse me, and then 4.4 million people are severely food insecure. They've been chased from their homes. They're living in camps. And of course, that you can imagine what that looks, and there'll be a picture that will show. 8,700 schools, over 8,700 schools have been closed and 222 health centers have been closed. So not only are they food insecure, they don't have health care, and schools are gone. So now the children in these camps have nowhere to go for school. In the last few years, the displacement of people has now begun to affect Ghana. And so you can see on the coastline, you have the country of Ghana, Togo, Benin, and Cote d'Ivoire, Abidjan. The capital, Abidjan. Cote d'Ivoire is not listed there, is it? Okay. So those people have come across the border. And so now Ghana has to deal with displaced people in their country that are not, they're mostly from Burkina Faso. So the country, this conflict and the results of the conflict are spilling over into the coastal countries right now. So, and the worst thing is people are beginning to see attacks in northern Ghana, and that's where Bishop Agyenta's diocese is. He's right on the border with Burkina Faso. And then Sheikh Zakaria's base of operations is in Tamale, which is about 100 miles south from the border. So you have extremists now, or armed groups, coming into Ghana and Togo and Benin and Cote d'Ivoire. So the conflict is spreading. It's not too serious at the moment, but this is something that has really worried the church and CRS, and for me as well, covering Africa. So in 2019, the bishops of Burkina Faso and Mali went to Catholic Relief Services and they say, this is really gone too far. We need to do something different. We need to do something more. How can we address this in a way that would be positive? So they approached CRS. CRS then did 2 sessions to plan this out and to strategize on what CRS can do and how CRS could support the church and Islamic leaders as well to be able to push back this conflict. Okay, can we go back to the slide, John? Okay, this is just a house in one of the refugee camps, just to let you know what it looks like. So they put together what is now called the Sahel Peace Initiative, which englobes Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Ghana, and Cote d'Ivoire. CRS has granted each of these countries a starter fund of $300,000 to get things going, so they can start programs. So the idea for the rest of this session, now that my setup job is over, is I would now ask them to do a quick presentation, each of what they're doing specifically. Then we'll have a few questions to each of them that I'll start off with. And then the biggest part, the most important part of this is for you to have your chance to come up and ask questions. And feel free to ask any question. There is no quote unquote stupid question. You want to be informed, you come up, you ask, we will help you through it. Because this is important. Great, all right, thank you very much. I'm sorry, John, could you roll through? Okay, yeah, these are some of the figures for displaced refugees and asylum seekers. The next one, John. All right, and this is the map of the Sahel countries in orange and the coastal countries in green. And the sort of the flow of the refugees that you see. Next one, John. And there's that picture. Can you imagine being in a refugee camp, living in those conditions? And that's why the support to the Sahel Peace Initiative for the humanitarian, for the human costs of this is really important. Working with the church to deliver aid to folks like this. And next one, John. Next one. Burial site. John, next one, please. And then, all right, this is the Sahel Peace Initiative. There are three sort of tracks to SPI: reinforcing and accompanying local leaders, mobilizing local leaders, and convening power, bringing people together. We'll talk about that in relationship building, and then telling their stories. And that's why we're here today. Great. All right, thanks, John. Okay, we're so glad you're here. Let me start, Sheikh, with you. Yeah, that's going to be important. attach it. Yeah. Let's put it right there. Okay. Okay. Sheikh, you've over the last week when you've been here, we've talked a lot about your work in your interfaith center and how you've been able to put those interfaith dialogues into action and to build social cohesion. Can you give us here an example of how and when that kind of work has succeeded and the kind of work that you're doing?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Steve. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I have to start with a short prayer as we are in our Ramadan month and we consider it a holy month. So join me in this short prayer. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi wahdahu. Salatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad abduhu wa rasuluhu. Salawatullahi ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahabatihi wa man istasanna bi sunnatihi ila yawmiddin. In the name of Allah, the gracious and merciful, we thank you for this morning. We thank you for our lives. We thank you for the guidance that you give us in our everyday work. And above all, we thank you for our general being and the abundant resources that you have made available to us. And as we do so, we also pray that we're working for peace, and Lord, we want you to connect our hearts and minds so that we'll be able to bring peace to the world. In your best names we pray, Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim, Sirat al-Lazina an'amta alayhim, Ghayr al-Maghdubi alayhim, Wala-d-Dallin. Ameen.
Ameen. Ameen. Thank you.
Now then, I'm from Ghana, as the moderator has indicated, with my senior colleague. Ghana is a culturally and religiously pluralistic society. So we have Christians in majority, we have the Muslims and the traditional believers. Now, all of these people are actors in common social space. And you know the conflict theory that says that the closer you are in a common social space, the possibility of conflict is always there. So if this is the situation, that means that we have to have a way of preventing or minimizing conflicts. So we have different causes of conflicts in our countries. Causes such as, chieftaincy conflicts, where people, tribal leaders fight for higher positions. We have political conflicts, where political youth, take up arms against during elections in particular. We also have conflicts over land. Religious conflicts are too few, but when it happens, it has more devastating impact than all of this. Why? Because it is religion that, particularly missionary religions such as Islam and Christianity, we have brothers and sisters everywhere. And once they hear that there is conflict in Ghana, everyone wants to support his brother or sister. So you see, we'll have to have Muslims coming to support Muslims, and Christians may support Christians, and so on. So what would have been a simple conflict becomes a huge one. So that is why everybody is making whatever effort we can master in order to make sure that we prevent conflicts and build peace. So on our side, we have decided to use a mechanism that is globally accepted as one of the effective ways of bringing people together, and that is the interreligious dialogue. Interreligious dialogue brings various religions together at a common platform to talk to and listen to each other on how to deal with common problems that affect all, and above all, on how to promote unity and cohesiveness in our society. So interreligious dialogue has been recognized as one of the effective tools. I just want to quote to you what Cardinal Arinze had said, the one-time president of Interreligious Dialogue in Vatican. He said, interreligious dialogue is the meeting of hearts and minds across religious frontiers, a meeting of sincere believers who want each to listen to the other, to identify areas of convergence and divergence, and to study together what they can do together. And I think this captures what interreligious dialogue indeed is about. Let me give you another quotation by Pope John Paul when he said about religions working together. He said, "It is by working together in harmony that religious communities can be effective and efficient, can construct bridges and build links of solidarity." And that is exactly the purpose of dialogue, interreligious dialogue. So now we understand what dialogue is intended for. We in Ghana have chosen to work to promote interfaith dialogue everywhere. And we started that quite a long time. Back in 1994, right? That's quite a long time, isn't it? 1994 is quite a long time. And we have been working, we worked for quite some time trying to mobilize support for the idea, from support from the imams and pastors and priests, because that is more difficult than dealing with the ordinary people. If we don't get support from them, we are not going to go anywhere. A Muslim goes to a Christian wanting to build friendship, and he can be warned by a pastor saying, "Look, keep your distance from these people," and that ends it. So we had to deal with the religious leaders themselves, first of all, the imams, the priests, the pastors, and that took us some time. Then we move into communities. Now we segmented our population into adults, women, and young people, right? So we had programs for all of these people. That went on for quite a while. Then we decided to centralize our administration. We didn't have the structures that enhance our work properly as we needed. So we decided to have a center, to build a center. And in the center, we have our administration, we have facilities for conferences and so on. We have our library facility for anybody who wants to do some research on interfaith dialogue. We have all this, and that is supporting our activities. So from this center, we run conferences, we run workshops, and we also take to the rural communities messages of dialogue where we give them lectures to conscientize them, sort of, create awareness among them about the fact that religion has been used to divide us. But this is a time for us to use religion to unite us. So we now give lectures in a way with topics that suggest how Christians, Muslims, and others can work together. So that is what the center has been doing. So our target is the youth, women, professionals, such as the doctors, nurses, teachers, and so on. And so this is exactly, in brief, what the center is doing. So
That's brilliant, brilliant. Thank you, Sheikh. Let me switch to Bishop Agyenta. In our time together, your microphone should be good. In our time together this week, you've talked a lot about building relationships, and in particular between two communities that have been divided, the Doba community and the Kandiga people. Can you tell us more about that work? And in particular, who did you call on to do that work? Was it priests? Was it catechists? Was it sisters and brothers, the laity? So please talk to us a bit about how that happened, how you use your resources.
Okay, good morning to everyone, and we're glad to be here to share with you our experiences. As I was just walking in, somebody asked me, "What are you coming here for? Are you coming to give a lecture? Who are you?" I simply said, "I'm a pastor." So we're here to share with you our experiences, especially in, as he actually mentioned in the introduction, as practitioners. We are not experts in peace, but we are practitioners. And as a bishop for 11 years now, I have come to be convinced that peace building is a pastoral tool, because you need to be able to use that in order to be able to reach the communities, not only your Christians, but also you are going, if you want to evangelize and communities are divided, you need to be able to see how you can reach out to them and to ensure that they are at peace before they can listen to the gospel. And so what we have been doing, especially building relationship, and one of the examples of, that we have managed to really succeed, especially linked with the Sahel Peace Initiative, is what he has mentioned. In my diocese, there are two communities of the same ethnic group, same language, same culture, but different villages, and they are fighting over a piece of land. And this has created a lot of tension. There's loss of life, loss of property, and also people have fled the place. And so we decided that, well, we needed to do something. And basically because of the very fact that, as you heard about the Sahel peace, the crisis spreading to Ghana, we said we needed to do something. First of all, because the conflict in Burkina has already spilled over into Ghana. In the first place, we have about 4,000 refugees who have crossed the border and they're living in Hazic. And secondly, we also believe that if we don't resolve any conflict that is on the ground, we are simply preparing the ground for the extremists. When they come in, you have it very easy. And therefore, if there's any conflict in the place, we need to be able to deal with it. And that's the reason why, with the support of CRS, we decided that whatever we have been doing as a diocese for the past 20 years, this special crisis is calling upon us to do something more, something extra. And that's why, with the support of CRS, we have engaged these two communities, and we tried as much as possible to bring them together. And peace is built through relationship, because no one person can do that. And so in trying to deal with this conflict, we have involved a number of people, beginning with the traditional leaders, the chiefs, because every village has a chief, and the people listen to the chiefs. These are the traditional leaders. And therefore, if there's a conflict, these are the key pillars that you need to deal with. So we brought the chiefs together from the conflict parties. Then we brought the youth, because the young people, they listen to the authorities. If they tell you to go and shoot, they will shoot. If the people tell don't kill, they will kill, because they are so much obedient to the traditional authorities. So we also brought the youth together from the different factions. Then we brought the women, because the women are also very, very instrumental, because they are the majority, and most of when there's conflict, they're the people who suffer together with their children. And so we also try to reach out to the children. And then also the opinion leaders. There are some people who are not living in the villages, but they have the means. They are more enlightened, and so they can instruct the people who are in the villages to be able to cause confusion. And sometimes because they have the means, they're able to fund, to give them the means to be able to buy the weapons and all that. So we also try to reach out to the various opinion leaders who are living outside the village, and to bring them together to see that we need to be able to work together to bring about peace. Then we engaged also the security forces, because when there's violence, you cannot go in there. So we try to reach out to the civil and the political leaders to ensure that you are responsible. The government is has a priority to be able to protect the people. And so if there's conflict, we need to hold them accountable. So we try as much as possible to let them also know that they have a duty to protect the people. So all these people, we try to reach out to them. And that took us quite a while, because it's not just one day. So we had to get a kind of a committee to be able to move from all these stakeholders. And then eventually, on the 24th and the 25th of February, we managed to bring all these parties together with the leaders and the communities. And something that we also learned in the process is the very fact that one element that can be very, very instrumental in bringing about peace is working through relationship. We didn't even know about this until somebody, one of the traditional leaders brought it up, that the two villages, they are related. If you trace back their ancestry, that there's a common ancestor. And people didn't know about that. So he decided that he was going to trace back to the ancestry, and eventually he got to the bottom of this ancestry, and found that there were people around who would be able to come and be able to relate with me, to see these people together. And that really worked a lot. Because when people trace their ancestry to one ancestor, they realized they were one people. So on the 24th of February, they decided to have a ritual, a traditional ritual cleansing, because people had died, the land is polluted, so they had their own ritual and brought people together, and they kind of course, most of them were traditional, they kind of sacrificed and also purified the land. Then they said, no, we want the Christian denomination and the church to be able to get involved. So on the 25th of February, they also invited us. And so I went there with my staff, and also some of the Muslim leaders were there, the Protestant leaders were there, and we also had a service, and we prayed and we blessed the land. And on that day, what happened was that the two chiefs, who were hitherto enemies, they drank from the same bowl, and then they also prepared food for them, and they ate from the same bowl, which is a practical demonstration that for now we are no longer enemies, because if we drink from the same bowl and we eat the same food, it means that we are laying aside our enmity. And this was what sealed the peace. So today there is a lot of peace in the place, and we have celebrated that, and the people are so happy. And very soon the rains are going to return, and that piece of land which was contested, people are now going to go freely in order to be able to farm without any fear that there will be reprisals from other sides. And so this has been a very, very big story for us as a church, because it is not only preparing the ground to ensure that when we have violence and the extremists coming from Burkina, that we are already socially, together, and therefore nobody can take advantage of the community.
That's a great story. That is a really, really great story. And I like the idea of peace building is pastoral. That's the new encyclical, I think. That's a title for a new encyclical. So who's going to write it here? So we could say much, much more. They're doing so many more things than this. But why don't you start thinking about your questions and come up to the mics, and I'll call you. And the one thing that I would like, especially Sheikh, for you to add if you respond to a question is your work with the peace councils. We didn't get a chance to talk about that. So maybe, is that a question?
Yeah.
Okay, come on up.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much. My name is Ed Jerkovic. I work here at the Pulte Institute for Global Development. I've actually been very lucky to work with the University for Development Studies in Tamale. So it's wonderful to have you here. My question is about the way that you work to engage with people around the ideas of truth claims of, our faiths. So of course, whenever we're having dialogue amongst different religions, I think it's important to recognize that, as Catholics, we have claims about what we believe is true. And people of the Muslim faith have claims about what they believe is true. And I don't personally think that can preclude dialogue, but I know a lot of people, especially people who haven't engaged with people of another faith very much, think that there's an inherent tension there, that it's not possible to have dialogue when you have differing views on what is an objective truth. I just wanted to ask what your experience is engaging in dialogue with people who might be new to that idea, or what your experience has been with the ways that you try to bridge that gap. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for this question. We realized that right from the beginning that when people talk about dialogue, most often it is at the intellectual level, and so discussions about theories or possibilities and things like that. But we decided to engage in practical dialogue, and this implies that you get people to understand that in spite of the religious differences, they are common humanity brings them together. And particularly Muslims and Christians, our religion tells us that they are much more close together. They are from Abrahamic religious traditions, so they are close together. So we try to get them to understand that, yes, you can work together. There's no problem about that. So every community has its own problems. And when we facilitate dialogue, it becomes easier for them to sit together and try to plan a response to whatever challenges that they have together as a community. I remember in Zoo area in Tamale where they had problem about water and they wanted a dam. Now, the Christians could not do that alone. Muslims could not do that alone. But it happened that we went in there to facilitate dialogue. So that gave them the idea, yes, so we can mobilize as religious groups. And when we do that, everyone will join, because we are, very religious in Ghana. You are either Christian or Muslim, or there's nobody who is, very few are atheists, right? So using that method, they got together, they were able to find ways and means to provide the drinking water for themselves. We have used dialogue to diffuse tensions. I still remember when this evangelist Bonke came to Ghana, and there was a problem. Some Muslims, listened to his preachings. They were not happy. They mobilized their forces to go and attack the gathering where he was preaching. It was, again, dialogue members who intervened and made sure that that didn't happen, right? There are cases where people really have had serious problems, such as Nantong in 2004, where the Church of Pentecost went to do their programs, and for 1 week, and the youth in that community came out, largely Muslim youth, because the community is largely Muslims. They came out and helped them to set their tents and everything. And after the third day, I think there was somebody who preached in a way they were not happy. When we found out, he said they were condemning Muhammad and condemning Muslims and their attitudes and so on. And they were not happy. So unfortunately, somebody reported this to the congregation in Friday prayer. So after the prayer, there was fire. So the youth went on rampage, destroyed their properties, their public address systems and cars that they came with, and so on. It became a police case. So the police was managing the case, but the same community, we have been there with interreligious dialogue messages sometime, so they called us. They gave us a call and say, we have a problem. So what? They say, we are in the police station because this and this and this happened. How did it happen? That a stranger from outside came and preached and condemned all the community, Muslim community, that, and so it brought about a confusion. So we followed up at the police station. We told the police to let us intervene and, find a solution to the problem. And we were successful in moderating that process, so that it ended up in smiles. The church asked the Muslim community to sort of compensate them in a way for the damages to their cars and things like that. We again got the politicians, the parliamentarian that is the constituency, the chief and so on, to put together some small funds for the compensation. What I'm saying is that we do a lot trying to take dialogue to the far and near and try to get people to understand that it's all about working together. Because it is when you get together closely trying to solve a common problem, that is where you build bridges, that is where you build more effective relationships. And that is the way we go with dialogue, interreligious dialogue in Ghana.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Bishop Agyenta, something you want to say to the question?
Well, I think what he said is very true. Most of it, when you begin with doctrine, you are not going to go anywhere when it comes to dialogue. And I think what they are practicing is a dialogue of life. And because of the very fact that most of the, whether it is Muslim or Christians, most often those who are into this violence, they are not well informed. And sometimes this difficulty can come out of ignorance. And so the other day we were saying that we as leaders, we need to be able to ensure that we rein these people in by making sure that we also enlighten them, because sometimes it has to do with interpretation of certain texts that people misinterpret. So I think basically what you said is true, that we focus more on the dialogue of life, and that is yielding more fruits for us.
Great. Yes.
Thank you very much for your inspiring presentation and what I've been hearing from you, both the three of you since. I was really inspired and happy when I heard you mention about our common humanity and how you are using dialogue to resolve the interreligious problems in Ghana. By the way, I'm Lillian Ehidiamen. I'm from Nigeria. And I noticed that in West Africa, we have almost the same problem, especially interreligious conflict. And also I noticed the contribution of politicians to these problems, because at the grassroots level, we don't have much problems. Sometimes we don't even know whether you are a Christian or a Muslim, especially during this Muslim feast. You see people visiting one another to celebrate with one another. But at the political level, that is where these rhetorics come to play. You are a Muslim, you are a Christian, you are this, and you are that. And also, I notice a kind of greed that is really fueling all these things, that people want to get to power and they want to use this religious stuff as a means of backup to get there by playing politics of identity. Again, what came up for me listening to you, again back to dialogue and common humanity, is this popular concept in Africa, Ubuntu, which I know we all have in our different languages, but Ubuntu is what is popular, that is more available globally. So I'm wondering if this actually can again be brought to the forefront of the dialogue, because this is what promotes ethics of community. I am because you are because I am. These have been present in the past in Africa, but now it's gradually dying because greed is taking the center stage. At the level of Ubuntu, we don't think about religion, we think about community, what brings us together. I'm wondering what this speaks to you in your dialogue process, if this again can throw more light in how you are making efforts to bring people together. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that Ubuntu is the central philosophy that we use in dialogue. When we're dealing with people at the top, right, the academicians, we have a way. We provide opportunity for them to dialogue over scriptures, to see to what extent our religion permits us to engage with people of other faiths. And after a while, they will come to an understanding that our humanity, our common humanity, precedes our being Christians or Muslims. We are Christians or Muslims because we are human. And that should be put, at the top of, that should be our top priority, improve our human relations. So I understand, as you are speaking from your experience in Nigeria, Nigeria has somehow a different or slightly different situation where politicians like to use religion as a way of attracting support and votes. In Ghana, this is not the way. In Ghana, no politician goes anywhere and to project himself as a Christian or Muslim just because that will give him an advantage. That doesn't happen, right? So we don't have much of that problem. So what we're trying to do is to take up projects on formation of the young people. There are going to be those in future who are going to manage institutions in our country. So if they understand, have common understanding as brothers and sisters, from one tradition, Abrahamic tradition, and so we can work together. We need to understand each other. We need to, maybe if we had committed any offense against it, we need to forgive each other and so on and move on. That is going to help to improve relationship now and into the future. If you look at the programs that we have, I tell you, every now and then we bring youth from the school, in-school youth, out-of-school youth. We have them, many of them who haven't even been to school before. We have all of them coming to our center, to participate in these formation processes. And we reach out to those who are far to reach, the interior, the remote villages, and so on. We try to set up small group, interreligious dialogue groups in their own communities, right? So that helps them to do whatever they want to do at their own level, right? And that helps cohesiveness at that level. Right. The youth, every now and then, when we have Eid al-Fitr, Eid al-Adha, the youth are able to organize, Christian Muslims, organize games to celebrate Muslim events, games and so on to celebrate Christian events. Where do you think this is taking the youth to? Right? It's going to increase love and affection among them. It's going to increase cohesiveness among them. It's going to erase that, a kind of social distancing that earlier on exists among our religious youth. Okay. So this we think we should emphasize. The politicians can do whatever they want, but we are committed to make sure that our young people get to understand each other and are ready to work with one another.
Great. Okay. Bishop Agyenta, and then we have one last question. You want to respond to our sister's question?
Well, I think he said quite a lot about that. The only thing I'll need to add is that that in Africa, this idea of the common humanity is very strong, and you don't realize that when you go into a family and all other religions are represented, you have a Muslim, Christian in the same family, brothers and sisters, and so religion, that doesn't really play much. And I think that we will need, this is an aspect that we have she's right to say that we are losing it, and we are losing it just people because we're not paying attention to that, even from the family. So I think that is an area that we need to work on. Unfortunately, at a national, international level, I mean, Pope Francis' apostolic letter of the Fratelli Tutti, that is a whole concept, social friendship. And so if we take that even at the international level, it's something that we need. Why is the Pope talking about that? It's because we're beginning to lose our common humanity, even at the international level or the national and universal level. And I think this something is a clarion call for all of us to understand that we have a common humanity and we need to protect that.
Great, thank you. One last question, then we'll wrap up.
Thank you. So, we talk about a lot of dialogue and starting that dialogue. So, and this is kind of off of that, so I'm sorry if I make you repeat yourself. But when it comes to actually starting that dialogue, going to a different place and meeting someone new and getting them involved in this like seemingly long process, how does that actually look in terms of what you guys do? Is it just as simple as extending a hand and people come to you, or is it a little more complicated? I think especially as it pertains to areas of armed conflict, is it just people acting in good faith, or is it something more specific? You talk a lot about the youth and things like that, but I guess my question is, what is the setting that you're actually meeting these people in an area where you're, you could start by, finding that common ground, talking about family, talking about, especially Bishop, you say protecting your people and things like that. Thank you.
Bishop.
Yeah, I think this is a very, very good question there, because CRS, through our work with CRS, we have developed what we call the Rising from Resilient Roots. That is a process whereby young people living in conflict situations are made to become aware of what role they can play in order to be able to bring about cohesion. And so we reach out to bring all these youth together to be able to and spend some time with them. Sometimes it takes about a day or two so that they really get to know the dynamics. And at the end, most of them feel, well, we have been misled. We think we have been led astray by people either from outside or even people within the community. And so we have opportunities for that. And that's for the young people. We do the same thing with the women. As much as possible, bring them together and also to try to let them also understand that they are peace agents. And in Africa, and especially in Ghana here, we have a lot of women groups. And women like to meet together, they have their own things to do and all that. And we try to focus on that. We take advantage of these human groups. Some of them just basically for associations and all that, or maybe common interests and all that. So that we work with them, and that's where they can now take the message that they learn or the experience that they share back to the families and to the communities. So when it comes to really working with these people, we know that they are powerful agents for peace. And that's why we invest a lot also in that, for the young people and also for the women. I think, I don't know whether this answers your question, but it's an area that we really need to pay attention, because these are the real people, the women especially, they take that to the family. And that's where everything begins.
Great. Anything to add, Sheikh?
Yeah. You see, when we started interreligious dialogue, one of the things we had in mind was to communicate to parents as much as possible. Muslim parents, Christian parents, they bring up the children, and sometimes the children will come out with the ideas that they have been fed with. So if a family is bringing up children and often try to get the children, separated or away from other children who are from different religious background, that will affect the relationship that the child will develop as he grows. So our initial appeal was to the parents, especially, and teachers. So once children from home are not banned from interacting with other children, it's easier to socialize. It's easier to socialize. So that is why our center provides opportunity for every religious child to come and interact with other people. So at some time, it doesn't become a kind of mechanical, something effort to get people talking together. I mean, it's easier because the parents are telling them, oh, the Muslims are not bad people, Christians are not bad, so you can have friends among them and things like that, and that facilitates the work that we do.
That's right. So you see why it was so much fun working with these two religious leaders along with the 6 others that Sierra has brought from the Sahel. We had an enormous amount of great conversations and lots of learning and so on. If I could draw just 3 real quick points that may bring this back a little bit more to the academic crowd, is Bishop Agyenta was talking about his work in the villages. And what that work to me sounded like was, I think it's called participatory research action. Do I have that right? Is basically, Thank you. I knew it wasn't right, but I wasn't bringing up. That's why I'm not an academician. But it's exactly right out of your books. Those who are writing books on this, they have applied this in a perfect way. And I think this is a great example. The other example that Sheikh brought up is this interreligious dialogue. It's not just about texts. It's about texts and context. It's how we can apply textual teachings to conflicts in our country, conflicts in our region, in our towns, and use the text to inspire us towards solutions in addition to what we bring to the table from participatory action research. That is what faith communities bring that secular groups may not have. Maybe they've inculcated some of the principles, but that's what faith communities bring to the table in a much better way. And the last point is based on what our sister from Nigeria was talking about, is Ubuntu, and the fact that the root causes of these conflicts are not religion. It's not sheikhs fighting with bishops or bishops fighting with sheikhs or imams fighting with priests. It's not religious leaders that are leading this. It is people that will use religion as a force multiplier. I want people to join me, so I'm going to say those people over there are bad, and we have to protect ourselves from them, and vice versa. And religion is a very strong force mobilizer, because you can't negotiate your religious beliefs. You don't do that. You believe what you believe, and if it's distorted, then you can take a conflict that is about land, as the conflict between the Doba and the Kaginga, thank you. And you could turn it into not just that can be resolved, but you turn it into religion, and you don't resolve it that way. That just complicates things enormously. So thank you very much for everything that you've said and everything you've done. We have 2 more things we need to do. One is we would like to wish Sheikh Zakaria a happy Ramadan. And then we're going to end with a prayer from Bishop Agyenta. So what I'd like to ask you to do is the 3 of us to stand up. And the way you wish a Muslim brother happy Ramadan is Ramadan Kareem. So can you say that, Ramadan Kareem? Ramadan Kareem. So on 3, we're going to wish him happy Ramadan, but with a little bit more force. Bishop, please join us. Because he has a whole month to go. And I've done Ramadan many times in Muslim countries, and it's harder than Lent. It is much harder than Lent. So Ramadan Kareem. 1, 2, 3. Ramadan Kareem.
Allahu Akbar.
Good. Good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bishop, can you end us in a prayer?
Maybe on our feet.
Yes.
Let us rise. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
God, our Father, we want to thank you for our lives. We want to thank you for our vocation. We also want to thank you for our professions, especially in the area of peace building and research. We thank you for the possibility to be here these days to reflect on what you want us to do to bring about more social cohesion to improve our relationship, first of all with you, but above all our relationship with one another. We ask you as we go through these days and this reflection to grant us your spirit of courage and strength, because our world is divided, it's polarized. We need courage, we need strength, and we need vision. This is what we're asking you, especially that these days of reflection may grant us also the wisdom to be able to continue to work for peace in the world. Bless all of us, and especially all those who are contributing to this reflection, strengthen them. But above all, as I said, grant us the courage to be peacemakers. This prayer we make through Christ our Lord.
Amen.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Thank you. Thank you very much.